Okay. And Lord, holding it down for Picola. Always the one. Okay. I'm going to get started in about a minute. If you just joined us, say hello in the chat. Tell us where you're joining from.
All right, it is 12:05, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today. We are Black Innovation Leaders of Florida. My name is Rose Legis. I am one of the co-founders and board members. I am in the Orlando area. And so want to just give just a quick intro on BILF. Before I start, let me go ahead and introduce our other board members. So we have Dr. Wanda Eugene, uh, and she will be our moderator today. And she is located in the South Florida area. We also have with us Lloyd Richard. He is also one of our co-founders and board members. He is located in Pensacola, Florida, with the Kukua Institute. And then we have our president, Ebony Vaz, who is online. She is in the Tampa area. Again, one of our co-founders and our president of our board. And I think that's it for our board members for right now. All right, so Black Innovation Leaders of Florida. Our mission is to unite and provide access, education, advocacy, and technical support to Florida organizations and leaders with a focus on elevating innovation within the Black community. Our goal is not to necessarily create additional programs that are already existing. Our goal is to support and advocate for and leverage our network and our resources to support and advocate for existing organizations that are doing the work, boots on the ground in the different areas within Florida, within our communities, especially when it comes to elevating innovation. Participating organizations and leaders are committed to ensuring engagement and initiatives supporting innovation within the Black community, that align with addressing needs to push equity, wealth, and opportunities. So again, aligning with the Florida Black Innovation Ecosystem for Success, non-Black and Black supporters can align by agreeing to meet the needs as outlined and measure their progress towards helping to advance the Black community. So just to show a couple of our founding leaders and supporters. Basically, this organization started from these leaders who were meeting up at Synapse, which was a tech conference that was held in the Central Florida area, primarily in Tampa and Orlando. And we were meeting at Synapse and just coming together, discussing different things that are happening within our community. And we identified, number one, how much network and resources that we had together with the individuals that were there, and also the need to support each other across the board. As we, talked about our experiences with different funders and different initiatives, we identified areas where one, area would get more support than another. And so we wanted to be able to leverage and work together so that way we can bring the support needed to areas that we identify as innovation deserts, right? Where innovation is not necessarily being funded and supported, and it needs to be. And so that's kind of how we came about. So again, as we align with the Florida Black Innovation Ecosystem for Success, our focus are on our 5 pillars that is identified here. We are focused on public policy, procurement, talent, education, and capital. So we'll give more information about the org and different future events that we have. We encourage you to definitely join our newsletter. But for now, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Eugene so we can get started with our panel and our focus for the event today. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. And welcome, everyone. We're really excited at the opportunity to spend this time. I know it's the end of the week and everyone's kind of on that tail end, but this is an opportunity to learn some new skills and to and be enlightened. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in, but I just want to pause for a second and also mention, and not just what BILF does, but this Beyond the Block series that we've been doing, and why this is timely. And so with our Beyond the Block series, we've been doing a bunch of various webinars, and you can learn more on our website about how do we think about leveraging some of these technological skills as innovators, right? As a community of color, what are some of the gaps and how do we fill those gaps? And what are some local resources we can tap into? But it's this particular session, Building Your AI Toolkit, is something that we wanted to do as a spinoff in terms of the spirit of Juneteenth that we just celebrated last week, because freedom isn't just historical, right? It's economics, it's technological. And so today is about making sure Black innovators are intentional builders with AI and just not consumers of it. And so oftentimes when there's a new innovation, a lot of people in our community, we're on it in terms of using it, but not necessarily in the space of creators. And we tend to move into those spaces too soon. And so there's been a lot of conversation about AI, how you're using it for your business and where you the different tools. And we'll talk about that shortly. But I want you to enter this conversation about what is it that you need, right? What are the goals you're trying to accomplish? What is it you hope to walk away from? And how can this time together help you foster that growth, that innovation, that next step, right? And so we want to make sure that you walk away not just, oh, that was interesting and informative, but I can actually have some practical next steps of how I can leverage what I've learned. And a couple of quick housekeeping, drop your questions in the chat at any time. We'll take them live after each speaker. If you're not members, stick around at the close and we'll share with you how to get involved. So before we kick off, there was a question when you signed up in terms of what is your AI journey? Just so we can add that to our conversation, um, Rose, do we want to do that as a poll here, or do we want them to just drop that in the chat?
We can have them do that, drop that in the chat. They answered it on to register. So
Okay.
yeah, we captured it there, but we can definitely drop it in the chat.
Yeah, just so our speakers know who's in the room in terms of where are you on your AI journey? Have you deep in the weeds, you've built out, your agents, you got your whole back office done, or you do some queries here and there and not still sure how to integrate it into your daily. Would love to hear, so drop those in the chat. And so we're going to go ahead and open and learn more about what we can design. No matter where you land in the poll, there'll be something useful for you here. So before we get started, so getting started with our first speaker, Dr. Anderson Prewitt is an AI governance architect, entrepreneur, and author of Enhancing Business Value Through Artificial Intelligence. He's founder of DR80PA LLC. I'm not going to try to say that as an acronym, and a former course facilitator at Cornell University, where he focused on AI strategy and generative AI. He serves as a scientific advisor for the AI 2030 Global Initiative and teaches enterprise AI management at USF Muma College of Business and is a certified board advisor. Dr. Pruitt brings both the research rigor and the real world tools of Black innovators need to build lasting AI advantage. So we're going to kick it off with Dr. Pruitt.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, give me just a moment to share my screen. And just let me know when you can see it. It should be popping up soon. All right, I think that's it. Okay. All right. So first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk to you about this subject, which is near and dear to my heart, just because anyone who knows me knows I'm always playing with the latest and greatest and newest tools. But as more AI advances, more AI technology, and more AI, quite honestly, is available, one of the things that I realized, both in my writing and my research and my work, is that um, the tools are everywhere. There's a new tool every day. They're getting better and better. Some are good, some are bad, and it's, hard to kind of keep up with, what's the best, what's the worst, what to use now kind of thing. So what I've kind of come up with and kind of put together is this a process to at a high level kind of simplify and think through what you're actually trying to do, what you want to use AI for kind of first. It's kind of a good kind of first step to wherever you kind of are in your, I guess let's say AI journey kind of thing. And I think that's important because as we move forward in this, world, with all the new advances, especially for us in our communities, it's important to kind of learn how to use this technology because I'm a firm believer that either you're gonna, learn to use technology or you're gonna get used by technology. It's really one or the other. You're a binary scenario. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right. So building your own AI toolkit, right? What's the simple kind of process that you can kind of use to develop that for yourself? So, if you've ever been in a scenario where you downloaded it, used it twice, I'll give you three times maybe, right? And then totally forgot it existed or couldn't figure out what to do next. That's not necessarily a tool problem, right? It's really more of a workflow problem. So it could be that was a tool that was great and beneficial. It's just if you don't kind of go in thinking about the why, sometimes you can get caught in the weeds of the day-to-day, everyday life, what you got to do with your business, et cetera, right? So I'm not going to necessarily give you a tour of all the different tools that you can use. That's not what today is about necessarily. What I'd like to leave you with is more of a process that you can use. So whatever you're trying to do, you can kind of pick some of your own, tools that kind of best fit your scenario, what you're doing in any situation, right? So without further ado, um, here's the meat and potatoes, it's important to kind of do a map, match, and verify, right? So my, thoughts about it are one, map, right? Can you name something and map whatever you're trying to do in your day to day to actually some real task or real thing that you need to or want to do in your life or in your business, right? Like what's a repeatable task, something that you do weekly or regularly, that would be easier for your life if you didn't have to do it again, right? So I write a client update from scratch every Friday, is a very different ask than just I write content, right? So there's something in your process, even if you're a content creator or you have a business or you have clients or whatever that you're doing regularly, what is that thing that you could, ideally not have to do yourself, right? Once you kind of identify some of those, then what we're going to do is we're going to match it. And so on the next slide, we'll kind of go into like what this process looks like to kind of match where honestly, if you have a business, you operating in one of kind of six realms, quite honestly, with whatever you're doing in your business in any day of the week. And so before you kind of go all in on a tool, and this is what we're using the rest of the year, spend a couple of days, spend a week trying it out in one of these different realms or looking at it to see, does this match what I'm doing before you get totally downloaded and are all in on it, just so it doesn't get abandoned. And then this is kind of an every time thing. You need to verify before you use AI, right? One thing I would always say to most people is AI is probably more of a, people that have these, AI agents, right? Agentic AI is a thing where basically AI is kind of gotten autonomously doing, things these days. And it's one of those things where, if you were to hire an AI agent, you're going to personify whatever else, it's not that much different than hiring, somebody else when they first start, regardless how smart they are, how good they are. If they don't know your business, your clients, your customers, or what you do, they're still starting from zero too. And I think with AI, it's even more so because it's, one of those things AI, has to learn about your business, about your situation. And so if you, one, you should never just trust everything you get from AI. You always need to verify. There should be a human in the loop involved somewhere in any kind of final decision making process. And the best analogy I can think of is if you have any kind of business, it's large, small, etc., you probably have some type of things that go well and that you do, right? Which is why you've been able to stay in business. You have good relationships with clients. There's something you do well, which you turn into a business, or something in your business that you is very important to make sure your business keeps making money or keeps doing what it's doing. Okay, if that's a very business critical, important task, right? It's a legal task or something, but that could mess up everything if it's done wrongly or incorrectly. Would you allow a first year, unpaid intern to come and do that for you and take it over from scratch? Typically not, right? And so if that's not what you're doing, right, and that's not what is you want, I wouldn't let AI do it either, right? And so we'll talk about that a little bit too, but just to kind of move forward. Uh, this is what I call the SIGVIZ map. It's from my book called, I think, called SIGVIZ Matrix, right? It's kind of taking the signals and the vision, and we'll get into all the details of how it got named that. But if you think about your business and what you do, right, most things that you're going to do in business are really going to be mapped to one of these kind of six areas, right? Either it's something where it's like you're creating value, right? Where it's like you're turning what's in your head into something documentable or sellable, right? That may be some value being created for your clients or your customers, right? There's probably some kind of strategy to your business, right? Are you doing, competitive analysis, seeing what your competitors are doing? Are you trying to understand the market, doing research, right? You probably want to get some information on what your customers want, who your customers are, just some kind of something as you form a strategy around what your business is going to do. There's development work that you do every day, right? Whether that's keeping, just delivery, delivering your service or following up, keeping things from falling through the cracks or creating something new, right? These are all like internal development things, whether it's business development, getting more clients, some stuff that goes on internally to make sure your business kind of stays afloat and everything kind of, operates correctly. Then you have what I would call the story piece. And this is, I think, a lot of times overlooked in how, AI can be really useful in this part of it. Or I think this part of it is important when you consider using AI. How do you turn your expertise into something that people can actually absorb, right? And that's both internally, right? How do you turn the expertise, the things you do in your business into something that, the masses or the customers will be able to relate to, understand, to get what your business does, but also internally. If you're a, CEO, whether you're a small, large business or, working in some business, and you're tasked with incorporating AI, right? Either because of external factors, your customers want it, your supervisors want it, or your clients want it, right? How do you communicate the value or the use of AI internally to your internal teams, to your whoever? That's an important question as well. And then DNA, is just a shortened acronym for documentation automation, right? This is where you're basically handing off like repetitive tasks or looking at documents, kind of, sorting, seeing, document stuff, or even just automating things you're already doing correctly. The only way that can really be done well is if you understand, nothing will, put you out of business quicker than automating a flawed process. So part of it is documenting first what to do correctly. And then once you have that, figuring out ways to automate those things. And then if you can kind of put all that together, then scaling and kind of growing reach, growing how many customers you can get to and kind of saving costs, that's all kind of, part of it. So as you kind of think through these different, kind of six elements of your business, you should be able to map individual things that you do or individual tasks or parts of your process to one of these kind of buckets essentially. And then that can allow you to better see like, okay, for this bucket, Now let me choose a tool that works for this task I'm trying to do. So something as simple as, okay, I need to write a headline for my blog that comes out every week. Well, part of that is probably, telling a story. There may be some value creation in there, et cetera, et cetera. But depending on, what you're doing, that lets you know that, okay, whatever AI, tool or thing I'm trying to look for needs to be one that's, rated or very good at, taking in the information I have and writing that story for me regularly, right? Because I'm using information I already have in my blog or something. Versus if it's something where, hey, I need an AI that's very, very good at writing very detailed documentation because I'm trying to do the documentation part or doing something else, it may be a totally different tool that actually works better for that, right? You may need something on the story side that actually is also good at generating graphics or, more creative type writing, where another thing you maybe want to do needs more kind of documented, cross the T's and dot the I's type writing. So those are both different. This is a quote I love by artist passed away named Nipsey Hussle, but he said this like a decade ago, right? He was like it's an incredible time right now. It's like a gold rush. This technology has empowered everybody. And I go in the whole thing in my book about like how, prescient he was in terms of like just his marketing and savvy and things like that, but just understanding the technology side of the, industries and things that he did. But I say that because if you look at the time we're in right now, and I just talking about technology, he was just referring just the internet and social media and things like that. Now, when you think about AI and the opportunities that are available now, that idea of a gold rush is really true. Especially when you think about, some marginalized communities that haven't necessarily had access to all the things. In some ways, it can be, very much an equalizer, but it very much depends on if you're positioned correctly to take advantage of kind of what's there, what's coming, what's available, or if you're going to kind of get run over by it, right? And just one thing to remember about the gold rush, and I'll try to, make sure people think about this. During the time of the gold rush, there were a lot of people who made money, a lot of people who went broke, right? But the people who always made money weren't necessarily the ones panning for gold, right? It was the people who were selling picks and shovels. It was the people who owned the land. It was the people who had the railroads. It was the people who sold maps to where the gold was, right? So if you haven't built some foundational model and you don't work at Anthropic and you haven't sold, stock like SpaceX and all that and haven't caught necessarily that end of the AI side, doesn't necessarily mean it's too late for you, right? There's still picks and shovels that need to be sold. There's still maps, this whole AI go rush and all that. So don't forget that part of this whole thing as well. So one thing, a couple things I want to leave you with. So one, this is what I would call like a 60-second trust test, right? Because if you look at how AI kind of hits us, it's really ecosystem. So it's a couple different areas we got to look at the same time, right? So the five questions I would ask, right? Is it responsible? Is it regulated? Is it relatable? Is it reliable? Is it resourceful, right? Did a human actually review this before it went out, right? Ask that about whatever you're about to do with AI, right? Is it something that's regulated? Is it legal, financial, or health or hiring? Any of those things, slow down, and AI should not be the final decision maker. Let it give you a draft and then, see what's really good, right? Is it relatable? Would your customers still trust this if they knew AI helped you make it, right? Are you disclosing that information? Did you fact check it? Right? Is it reliable? And are you checking with the real person, not just with AI, right? Are you going beyond just the what the AI told me to do, right? And yeah, I think just as we're closing out, I think it's important to remember that like when we talk about like innovation and what the Black builders in particular, we've always built more with less, right? We've always used our creativity to do a lot more than everybody else. And so it's not about waiting for permission. It's about being intentional and deciding that, hey, we're going to take this moment and use it how we want to, how we need to. And that's just where it is. Um, last two things I'll leave you with are I'm not going to go too much into this, but one thing that I feel is very important with AI, and we talked about the strategy of how to use it a little bit, is also looking at the ethical side of how to use it correctly. One of the frameworks I've kind of put forth is got this what I call the Hebbets kind of ethical compass that looks at kind of these six aspects of harmony, ethics, veracity, integrity, discernment, and safeguards as something that you incorporate into any time you're going to use AI. The last thing I would say is whatever you're doing with AI, you kind of need to look at these kind of four critical systems in your business or what you're doing. You kind of need to, defend against AI or at least use AI or be aware of how AI could, be involved with them. And so analyze how AI interacts with each of these to make sure you're, being safe and protecting your own ecosystem of your business, your AI, whatever, right? Is the AI touching any kind of accounting and finance system, right? Is it in any way, leaving outside the organization? Is there an environmental or social impact that could affect your brand or trust or whatever, right? Governments and operations and how your business operates and moves and is governed regulations, is AI touching that? Is it part of your critical infrastructure, right? What are the technology stacks and security and things like that incorporated? So all those are things that are important to kind of consider as you're using AI, right? So the last thing I'll leave you with is if you don't leave with anything else, take some action today, right? So write down in the chat or for yourself, what's one task you think you can map out this week, and what's one tool you'll actually try, right? You know, pick one for each and write it down. Tell your accountability partner, tell us, tell BIL, like, let us know, like, what is it? Tell me, I'd let her know kind of what you're doing, where you're at, right? So again, map it, match it, verify it. That's all I got. If you love to kind of keep the conversation going, you want to contact me, contact information is there: LinkedIn, website, socials, email, all the good stuff. So feel free to hit me up if you need to. Also, I need to I created like a little sheet that I forgot to send ahead. So if you email me or something, I'll send this out to anybody who's on the chat. It's just kind of some notes from this slideshow or whatever else. But anyway, that's all I got. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and please let me know if you have any questions.
All
You want to
right.
drop that link in the chat or send it and now we can send it out?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
I gotta find the links. But anyway,
Okay.
questions before I forget. Sorry, I'm
Yeah. So
shit.
while
Wish I
we
had more
wait for
together.
questions to populate in the chat, I have a couple questions to kick us off.
Sure. I may
Um,
have some answers. I may not.
all
Let's go.
You brought up some interesting points, and you talked about some of the work you've done in terms of realizing people don't have an AI problem. They have I don't know what my actual problem is problem. And so I
Mhm.
want you to talk a little bit more about coming to that realization.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's really the AI companies who will tell you like actually this is what you need and this is why this AI is better. And it's not even just like we think about kind of the big big four or big two or big three depending on who you're talking to, right? About like the major companies. Those are like the what they call like the frontier model developers, right? And most of us have heard of them. Like so OpenAI, Anthropic's been in the news right now with Claude. OpenAI is ChatGPT, right? Google has Gemini, which is another very popular one. And then there's some that are also kind of popular, but not as well known, like Perplexity. Twitter or SpaceX has, or X has, Grok. Those are like what they call frontier models. And the thing with all those is all really good, getting more and more powerful, all these things. But it's one of those things where in the kind of the research community, we're seeing on the news, all these companies, all this funding is going toward what they call artificial general intelligence, and which basically means a computer one day being smarter than a human in every facet of thought, thing, whatever else. The reality is most AI is actually fairly what they call narrow intelligence or just kind of narrow intelligence, meaning that it's really really good at one thing and does that really well. Some of them are getting better at doing a couple of those one things, but usually the system's tied together kind of thing. And I think the biggest thing I would say to people is one, while there's a lot of hype about AI right now, AI ain't new. AI is older than most of us on here, right? AI, if you play Miss Pac-Man, you've seen AI before. Same thing, right? If you played, back with Word when it had Clippy, or you used spell check, you used AI. Congratulations, you're an expert, right? So all those things have existed for a while. Now, yes, while they're new features, right? Generative AI is kind of a subset, so it can do a couple new things. These large language models and the ability to kind of produce them is added capabilities. But really, it's all of it is technology. It's getting better and better and can do more stuff. But understanding kind of that history of it, what that means is not necessarily that AI, quote unquote, or AI tools are so new that you can't catch up, or so, off the chain that we'll never be able to kind of wrap our heads around them. It's more so that more features, more things are being built. There are capabilities that are good, sometimes scary, we got to kind of watch out for. But the reality is, most of the time, it's us or a process of us, either whether not understanding, not being able to access it, or not knowing what's actually available, what to do, what we have. If you just start out with understanding your own KPIs, the documentation automation thing I was talking about, just understand like what are the processes I use every day and have those documented well, you're halfway to AI and probably light years beyond most other people, quite honestly.
All righty. And we have a question in the chat. In our information world, AI term is overused. AI is a collective of tools for different tasks. The challenge is understanding how the tools work by themselves or combined. Where should a novice start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think she probably more succinctly said what I'm trying to say, right? I think if you have no idea, right, if you just heard about AI yesterday and don't know where to start, honestly, you're not then that much of a different place, believe it or not, to some people who are working at Google and these frontier models kind of thing, only because the capabilities are changing so much. If you are a novice, I would start kind of what I said before with the whole kind of just map it, and kind of like seeing what are the things you need? What do you do, right? Um, and a good, simple, easy way is just use like ChatGPT or go to Google and Google, you need to just do a search. They have an AI mode as part of the search. You just go to the main, google.com, right? I think Microsoft does the same thing with Copilot, whatever. Just go to one of those and just ask them, start asking questions, right? And I will say this when you think about AI, there's a couple different ways you can use it, right? You can use it as a fully on like program it yourself tool. You can use this what they call kind of a Socratic learning, system, right? Meaning that ask a question, see what it says. Check your sources, right? It's not going to always give you the right answer. You should assume that sometimes it may be wrong. But I think if you've never touched it before or aren't familiar with it, I would start by just, doing some simple, the same way you use Google, use it for Google search, see what kind of information it can give, and then test that against some other AI. Me personally, I usually use, I'm being honest, a couple of them at once. It's almost like a little soap opera. I'll be like, hey, this AI, hey, that AI, ask them the same question. Then I'll be like, hey, what does AI say? One I'm gonna say that one lied. This one's wrong, wrong, wrong. This is right, right, right. The other one will say something different. But usually between there, that's where the human judgment comes in, where you can kind of see, okay, ask it for like actual primary sources is a good term to use, right? If you ask it for primary sources of where it got whatever information it's giving you, then it gives you a link you can click to get to actual information versus some hallucination that it made up. So I would just try, the basics of, asking the chat tools and then sometimes asking for recommendations on, hey, here's something I'm working on. What other tools beside you, besides AI, what other AI tools should I look at or investigate to solve this particular problem or to do this thing I'm doing?
Okay, awesome. Awesome. And so we're going to cover some of this with when Petra talks, but we launched a poll about have you ever mapped your workflow? And so we got roughly two-thirds of the folks here have, but we have a good amount that haven't. And so to ask, excuse me, excuse me, don't know where that came from. So for someone in this room who's never mapped their workflow before, where's the simplest place to start? Like what's the first repeated task most small business owners don't even realize is costing them hours?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the best way I would think about mapping your workflow is sometimes just simple as like just mapping your calendar, right? So sometimes it's a matter of, depending on how stretched you are or how well you actually put your calendar together. If you're like me, I always surprised, what's that I had a meeting, like that, it depends. But some people know their calendar like immediately out. One quick way is like, hey, here's my calendar and just kind of seeing like, or the task I'm going to do today, right? Or just sometimes keeping track of what you did, right? So I would start. Sometimes it's one of those things where you can be forward looking. If you have a calendar and know here's the clients I have or the things that I have to do or what my projects are looking like for next week, run it through some AI system or some AI thing and see like, hey, you know, how could I best do this? Are there things I could automate? What are the things I'm doing better, right? Another way is kind of looking the opposite way. Is like if you kind of starting on say Monday, right? I'm just gonna keep use one of these AI tools that literally I click a button and toggle what I'm doing. Like there's a software called Toggle that uses some AI. It's not ChatGPT, whatever, but like you can basically click the button, and if you do a lot of stuff, say in Chrome, it'll tell you how much time you spent on each different task or tab or whatever. Or just keep a stopwatch and write it down. But either way, if you kind of have a list of here's the stuff I did for a day, for a week, for a certain time, then you can kind of use that and kind of, I mean, I would ask AI, hey, what could I automate with you, right? Or with somebody, particularly with somebody to do these things. That's a kind of easy, low effort way to kind of just see what you're doing. Uh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And there are 100 of new AI launch literally every month. Um, uh, how do you tell the difference between um, a tool that's actually solving your problem versus ones that's just shiny and trendy?
Yeah, the shiny trendy is a lot right now. There's some really shiny ones. This is a great question. I think this is like a core piece of like my business. What I try to look at and do is it's a combination of things. So one, whether you look at like market research, you just look at like asking people, what you'll see is What you're describing is something that everybody's kind of starting to realize now, like, wait a minute, this was just shiny. It wasn't really, there's nothing behind here. The whole Wizard of Oz. Like, wait, there's nobody behind this curtain, right? That's happening with a lot of these companies. And what that is a lot of companies kind of jumped up as soon as like the ChatGPT, the first one came out and was like, they're what's called AI wrappers, where it's like, hey, here's my main thing, put AI on it and sell it for a bit bigger price, right? And so, inherently, I wouldn't necessarily say that's bad because there's been AI underneath a lot of companies for a while. I think what happens is one, a lot of those companies didn't disclose this is AI, this is what we're doing, or how we're using it, and they didn't really bring anything new or unique to the table, right? But it's just like, hey, here's what you're doing something cool, do it with my AI thing, right? And that's all they have for you. Then it's like, what's this between your AI thing or this better one that's vetted and has this big company behind it that if something happens, I can sue, right? Or something versus you, random person who just has an AI thing. Typically, you can kind of, I would say, tell a little bit by asking some deeper questions, right? If you kind of go through that same methodology, even the just responsible question, I'll ask, hey, who uses this? Who's their normal customer base? What can you ask them about? Can you speak to the founders? Have you heard the founders say anything? And really for, any kind of tool, is this, from a company you found reputable? And more so, a lot of times the biggest difference is, you know, what's the cost versus what you're using for ratio, right? So if you look at even some of the frontier models, they have stuff that's like starting at like $200 a month or more for like their like larger effort thing. Do you really need that much, right? Because let's be honest, for the super duper, what they call reasoning models that think through stuff for you, you do complex math equations. If you're doing that a lot and you're writing code and you want to replace, your entire computer system, maybe $200 is worth it if you're, instead of hiring like, I mean, more for, three different people for something, right? But somebody still needs to be there to check it. Somebody still needs to be able to do stuff. Maybe the $20 a month plan is really all you need if the main thing you need to do right now is just like I said before, like get this regular report you got to put out every Friday instead of you having to type it from scratch every Friday, having it automated so it shoots it to you and you just edit it a little bit, right? If the main thing you need it for is editing emails or like creating slides, that may be it. So for example, like one thing I'm not good at is any kind of visual, digital, whatever else, right? So anybody who likes my slide, thank you very much. Hope you're super impressed. I ain't make that. You know, I literally started out with all text and like, hey, a huge outline, a bunch of stuff, and was like, hey, make it pretty, go, and prompted whatever else. And sometimes I'll even go to one AI and be like, hey, give me a prompt I can use to make an image or a slideshow or something that I could put into a really, really good, AI that does image and prompt generation of PowerPoints. Give me a prompt I can use for it. Go, right? So if I'm using like Gamma or Beautiful AI or something like that. I'll maybe go to like Claude or Google or Gemini and say like, hey, how could I give me a prompt I can use to put in one of these systems to make a PowerPoint? Go. And then it'll at the end after a couple iterations of stuff come out like this, right? Versus my little chicken scratch. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. I have one more question and then we're going to switch. I see some questions in the chat I'm going to get to, but some of them will be answered with our next presenter. So I'm going to pause on some of those questions. But one of the things you mentioned earlier was like you were talking about ethics. So for a solo founder or a small team that doesn't have a compliance department, what's one ethical guardrail they should put on their own AI use starting this week?
I think that's a great question. I think so, and I'll be honest. Let me go back to that specifically for a second. I think it's one of those things where we think as a solo founder or a small business, whatever else, I don't have no compliance thing, so don't worry about it. In some ways, I think you're even more susceptible to the ethical side of it because if a big Google they do whatever, oh darn, we're sorry, that was this intern over here. We pressed the wrong button, whatever. We'll pay the legal fees, keep moving. If you do it, that's the end of your livelihood if not your freedom, if AI decides to do something. And one of the things that's happening now, and this is from I know from advising like corporate boards and just from both small businesses and larger companies, whatever, is that the ethical side of using AI is getting real. There are various like board level consequences and founder level consequences and executive level consequences if your AI takes some action or does something that harms in some way, whether fiduciary harm, it's lost money for the investors or for a customer or whatever else, or actual harm by whatever you did or defamation or whatever, you may be legally accountable for that. And so I would say the one thing that I would try to do is be honest, right? Line up your AI use or your AI tool, whatever else, with your own kind of morals and standards and what you're doing anyway, right? Like if you're going to be using AI for stuff, like I'm have no secret. If you see a slideshow by me, AI probably did it. Like let's just put that out there now so everybody know, right? Same thing with your business. If I go into business and say like, hey, I create slideshows for you for this amount, whatever else, and this is yeah, it's all hand done. I'm lying. Just don't ever believe me if I say I was designing some graphics from scratch. That's not what Anderson does, period. I think the same thing for anybody else, right? If there's, I feel outside of graphical design, there's some really genuine things I can bring to the conversation about technology, about AI, about these things, right? But the graphic stuff is not my wheelhouse. So either I hire somebody different or I'm gonna use AI to help us get to where we need to go until we can hire somebody different. And I think the same thing within your company, whatever your like core skill set, core thing, core reason for your company being, I think kind of understanding that and AI is basically adjacent to that. So if you kind of can just start with that level of kind of clarity, and integrity about it. I think that's probably the most important. I think out of all these different acronyms and stuff, I think, it really starts with that kind of, ethics and integrity, I would say are probably the kind of central pillars. Because if your AI use is aligned with your own personal ethics and you have the integrity to be about what you say you about, I think the other stuff will kind of be able to kind of, shake itself out. But that's where I would start, especially the small business.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And as we transition, thank you, Dr. Prewitt. That was amazing. And we'll have more questions for you at the end. So Dr. Prewitt just showed us how to build the toolkit in terms of the questions that we're asking of ourselves, of our needs, of our business, of our customers. But now we're going to switch over to Petra Robinson, and she's going to show us how to plan before we even pick up a tool. And so this is a really interesting point for me for the simple fact I feel like a lot of times we're pushed to use the next big thing without asking the why, right? The why and the what. And I feel like that conversation will save a lot of heartache. Petra L. Robinson is a technology and innovation leader with more than 20 years of experience delivering complex engineering research and technology programs across the federal government. She currently serves as the Federal Aviation Administration's Office of Commercial Space and Transportation, where she leads strategic research and innovation initiatives supporting the future of our U.S. space ecosystem. Petra is the founder of August Declan LLC, where she's building AI-powered ventures and applying generative AI to product development, content creation, business innovation. She's passionate about helping professionals, entrepreneurs, and underrepresented communities harness AI to create value, increase productivity, and unlock new pathways for growth and innovation. So handing it off to you, Petra.
Thank you, Wanda. Let me share my screen really quickly. That was a long bio. I didn't realize that I gave you such a long bio. Let me see if I can share the right one. There we go. Okay, can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Great. So like Dr. Eugene was saying, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the journey that you would take if you have an idea and you think it's something that AI could help you accelerate. How do you get from having that idea to actual product launch? And so I'm going to walk you through the key stacks, steps, and techniques that you would need to follow so that what you're producing is something that's reliable and scalable. So part one is the stacks, and this is where we're going to talk about the infrastructure. So you're looking at basically 5 stacks that you're going to have for your business. You're going to have one for product engineering, and this is what you use to determine how your product is going to be planned, designed, built, tested, released. You're going to have a financial stack, and this is where you're talking about how your business is handling money, pricing, payments, taxes, forecasting. You have a tech stack, and that's where the tools and platforms that are actually powering the systems you are delivering to your customer reside. And legal stack, we kind of touched on it in the previous in the previous discussion, because there are legal aspects, whether you are a solopreneur or whether or not you're leading a large business, there are legalities that need to be taken into account to protect you and to protect your business and also to protect your customers as well. And finally, there's the operations stack. And this is the part where these are the systems that kind of keep you organized. They support you, they keep you running, they're like your backbone. It's important to point out that the financial stack, the legal stack, the operations stack, those are things that people usually don't talk about when it comes to AI. But if you have a business, they need to be taken into an account. And AI is a great tool that you can use to actually help start drafting and creating strategies for those different stacks. So this diagram right here, it kind of lists out examples, and it's not exhaustive by any means of what would belong in each stack for you. Like for your business, you would need, for your project engineering, you would want to know like what kind of LLM you're going to use. And LLM stands for large language model. So Claude, ChatGPT, those are all examples of large language models. And they can be very powerful in terms of supplementing your team and providing you with important information that you need along the way. It's also key to have a task manager. What are you using to keep track of what you're doing and what you're producing? Examples of this would be like Jira, if you're familiar with like using that for software building. Monday, Linear, are all examples of what you can use to manage your tasks as you're building your product. You need something for your source code collaboration. Typically that's like a GitHub or maybe Bitbucket. And you need your coding environment. Your tech stack, which is what's really driving the tool that you're delivering, technically, it usually has like a front end, back end, database, so on and so forth. When you're going into financial, these are key things that belong in any business: bank account, budget, financial forecast, etc. On the legal side, your business formation docs, of course, your operating agreement, NDAs are key, terms of service, privacy policy, beta terms, contractor agreements, so on and so forth. And then in operations, that's something that's probably really familiar for most people. Like, you need an email, you need a place to file to store your files. So those stacks you're going to see appear when we walk through these steps. And this is kind of what forms that framework for rapid product evolution. But it's very important to note that AI is an accelerator, but it doesn't help you circumvent the process. It doesn't take the place of best practices. It doesn't take the place of having good systems and workflows in place. And so I've broken it out into 8 steps, starting at the bottom. And it's wider because you're going to spend some significant time there. And this is what forms the foundation to really support your public launch. You need to have your idea definition. You need to know what your end game is going to be for what you're trying to accomplish here. You need to validate and refine, do some product planning, set up your workflow. And all of this is before you even start coding. You don't code until the next step where you're talking about building fast with AI. But those 5 previous steps are key because that helps you build the context that you're going to feed into your AI tools. So that, like Anderson, Dr. Prewitt was mentioning before, a lot of these AI tools, you can treat them as almost like interns in a way. They may have the degree, but they don't have your experience. And thusly, they don't have the same context that you have for the problems you're trying to solve. And so it's important that you build that foundation of what your product is going to be. And then you have that context that you can then feed into your AI workflow and make sure that what is delivering for you is actually appropriate and that it doesn't give you a straw house when you really wanted a brick one. Okay, so step one, when you're defining the concept, and your goal here is you're trying to identify what your real pain point is, because it all starts with an idea, but you need to know whose problem you're trying to solve. How painful is it? Are they already spending money on the problem? Because you're not just trying to, oh, let's just build an AI app. If you're trying to innovate and build a business, you need to make sure that you're solving a costly problem. And AI can come in handy here to help you do that. You can feed into an AI tool, an LLM, let's say ChatGPT. I prefer Claude personally. Um, what your idea is, and ask them to help you kind of workshop it. Like, okay, so what could be the possible audience for it? Is there a market for it? So on and so forth. And so AI can help you do this, but it all starts with an idea that kind of comes from you. Next, know your end game. Know what your end goal is going to be for the company that you have, the product that you're trying to produce. Because again, these are things that you're building context here that you're going to want to feed into your LLM, into your AI workflow. Because when you're making decisions later on, you need to make sure that the decisions that you make support what your end game is. Are you trying to build a business that you want to sell for, I don't know, 8 figures in 5 years? Are you trying to start a solopreneur business that you can just earn a certain amount of money each year and you just want to keep the team tight? You want to keep it to you and maybe like a contractor later on? Is this a side hustle? Are you trying to grow a pre-existing business? You need to define what your financial goals are, what your goals are in terms of what you want this product to do. And make sure that you have that in your back pocket so that you can feed that into the LLM so that it knows when it's suggesting things to you, it's suggesting things that meet the goals that you have. Next, validate and refine. This is where you take your idea and you do that deep market research. You can do the competitor analysis, pricing analysis, which before AI would take a lot of time and a lot more people than probably just you. But with AI, you can supplement your team and you can use it to conduct that market research for you. You can use it to say, okay, this is my idea. How can I turn it into a product that has a competitive edge? You can have it generate market research strategies for you. It can help you identify what your target audience is. And finding gaps in the market, of course, is important as well. And this is where you start your legal, financial, and operations stack. Because one of the things you want to do in this step is ask AI to help you identify what are all the docs and files and what are some certain steps that you need to meet in order to get to your end goal. And again, all of this is, we're building context here that we're going to carry through to make sure that what's being developed gets you to where you want to go. Step 4, this is where you're going into product planning. At this point, you have more than an idea. You have, you probably have a list of features that you want that product to have. You know, like how much money you want to make and when and in what kind of format your business is going to be in. And so this is where you you take that idea, those features, and you drill down a little bit. And then you also use that to define what's going to be your MVP or your minimum viable product. You can use AI to have it help you draft your product roadmap and also help you to hone in on those key features that should be in your MVP. And this is also when, now that you have all that information, you can have that LLM help you define what is in your tech stack. it's also important during this part that you lean into some of AI's functionality in terms of best practices. And here I kind of suggest using some like role-based prompting, where you say, as an experienced product manager, recommend best practices for this. As an experienced business analyst, recommend best practices for this. As an experienced cloud engineer, recommend best practices for this. And then it will shoot all this information back to you, because these are things that those businesses that are well known in the field, or those businesses that are being acquired by well-known businesses in the field, they have that in their stack. Because what you want to do is you want to build something that is reliable. And it's better to get all of this stuff done now before you start coding than later. Because the further you get down the pike, the more expensive, the more costly, the more complicated it is to insert this later. Next, generating technical documentation. And this is something that Dr. Prewitt also talked about. Using AI to auto-generate a lot of your documentation is also important. Earlier in a previous step, you asked your AI, okay, what is the documentation that I need? Like, let's say you have a business and you want to sell it for like 8 figures within 5 years. That's your exit strategy, whatever. Ask it, okay, so what is the documentation that these acquirers would want to see? And you can build in a way so that as you're coding, it will auto document all this stuff for you. But you got to have that list first. You also want, during this part, to determine what your tools, platforms, and software will be that you're using to build, run, and manage the product, all of which go into your tech stack and or your product engineering stack. And again, this is all before you write a single line of code. Okay, next you're talking about setting up your workflow. This is where you really refine what your product engineering stack is. This is where you would do things like populate what is ever is going to be used as your task management system. This is where you can define those prompts and those workflows that you will reuse over and over again and save you time once you move to step 6. Step 1 through 5 is all about building context and building those things and generating the documentation and processes and systems that you need, so that when you get to step 6 and beyond, you're cooking. It's all just like you develop a rhythm, and all of a sudden you realize that you've done what would normally take, I don't know, a team of 5 engineers 6 months. You may have developed it in like a few weeks. So here in your setup of your workflow, you're going to use AI or your own research tool. You're going to figure out what is going to be your planning system. Examples I have here: Monday, Jira, Linear. You're going to select what is your AI coding platform or agent or assistant going to be. And it kind of depends on what you want to use it for, right? You have Claude Code, you have AI's Codex. Replit agent is very kind of, it's good for like quick prototypes, but it's more hands-off than a lot of the other ones that I listed here. And Cursor is a really good one that I enjoy using as well. You also want to set up what is going to be your coding environment, and you also want to generate, like I said before, the prompt templates that you're going to be reusing over and over again. And in here, you're going to have in those prompt templates what you need to tell the whatever is going to be your coding system to automate your documentation as you're coding through, to incorporate best practices for like well-architected cloud architecture, or something that secure software. The SAM is like software assurance model, secure software assurance model. So these are all things that you build now. And then you can feed it into step 6. And this is where you're building fast with AI at this point. And you can use AI in the role of product manager and developer. And this is where you can have it set up your basic structure for you in terms of like the project, called project scaffolding. You can use it to determine, okay, what task do I need to do next? Do I need to have it create the ability for a user to update their profile first? Do I need to have the ability for a user to make payments through Stripe? It will help you order all of those tasks for you. In fact, it will help you take the requirements that you had before, generate the task, and in some cases with Claude, it can integrate into some of these planning softwares and upload all of these tasks for you. So you can offload quite a bit here. You can also use it in terms of like generating the prompts, feeding in those prompt templates. You can generate the prompts that you're going to put into your AI coding assistant. You can use it for reviewing implementation plans and summaries, identifying if there's like follow-on actions. Did it identify a bug? Because unless you're a coding expert, some of what is shot back out to you, you may not understand. However, you have a handy LLM there that you can feed this into and tell it to explain it to you like you're a novice, and it will. You can also use AI to help prepare, test, and safely launch the product for users. After you've done the building of your MVP, this is where you can invite in some targeted users in the community for beta testing. Here's where you discover bugs. You can measure engagement. You can determine, okay, is there something in your product that confuses users? What are the features that they like? What are the things that they just don't pay attention to? And once you've gotten past your beta testing, then you're actually ready for public launch. So part 3 of my presentation, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the techniques so that you're incorporating some of the best practices when it comes to using AI. It's important to treat AI as part of your team. Assign it roles. When you are giving an AI LLM a prompt, one of the easiest things to do is to assign it a role so it knows, okay, so from what perspective am I trying to answer your question? So you can say, as an experienced product manager, can you review what I have in my task list and tell me what I should do next? As an experienced developer, can you look at this bug and tell me what's wrong? Put as an experienced, whatever that role is, before that question, and it gives it some extra context from which to answer and respond. For me, just as an example, I actually use, in my workflow, I have an LLM and I have an AI coding agent. I use Cursor for that. And I communicate back and forth with them. Like I'll use my LLM to determine, okay, what next task do I need to have coded into my source code? It'll identify it. I'll be like, okay, generate the prompt that I need to give. It generates a prompt. I feed it into Cursor and I say, Cursor, tell me the plan of how you plan on implementing it. And then I use my LLM to double check what Cursor gives me. And so you can kind of play them against each other because like it was pointed out before, no LLM, no AI model is without fault. They all have their different strengths. And so I find using 2 different AI models can really help in terms of like integrating almost like a peer review into how you're implementing and programming. And so I tend to do that, and I feed what I get from one into the other, and it kind of double checks. They double check each other. And one of the final things you see on there is like tech writer. Um, Again, this goes back to automating your documentation. Um, if you plan on bringing anybody else on to support you, if you plan on selling this business or this product later on, then there's certain sets of documents, a documentation that is typical and is needed for them to pick it back up and be able to add additional features, support the code later on. And so it's important that you incorporate auto documentation and use the tech writer abilities of AI to help you to do that. Next, we're talking about executing with precision. It's important first to focus on the MVP first, making sure that your first version is small. It's the key things. If you go too big, it will be harder to control. Your schedule will get away from you. And you may find that you spend a lot of time coding and developing something that your beta users show you isn't really that important. Structured workflows. Have your tasks taken from your task system. Have AI generate the implementation plan. Have another AI review that plan. Have an AI develop it and help you with release. Next, security early. This isn't something that you want to do in the final hours. You should implement and incorporate security frameworks from day one in the coding prompts. Auto documentation, I've hammered this home quite a bit, but use AI to generate your runbooks, your API docs, your architecture documentation, your user guides, all of that. And finally, prompt templates. These are things that you can just recycle and reuse over and over again, and it saves you a lot of time. And when it comes to building with AI, you really tend to pick up a lot of speed once you do that. And then final thoughts. Coding is really only like 20% of the battle. Like most of the steps that we went over, it's about having that robust foundation where you have your plans, you know where you're trying to go, you have built your context, and you know what you're feeding into the machine. Once you have systems, once you have processes, it makes everything go a little bit faster. I know there are a lot of 5-minute YouTube videos out there that are like, oh yeah, you can build anything with AI so quickly, make money and build this wonderful product in like a day. That's not reality. And so it's important that you make sure that you do your due diligence when you're trying to create a product that you actually want to sell. Next, and this is something that you can incorporate into your LLM's decision making, letting it know that unit cost economics is something that you need to take into account when you're suggesting or recommending that I do something. Because I have these financial objectives that I fed to you before, and so don't suggest anything that contradicts that or leads me astray from that path. And then lastly, just to harp on the legal stack again, if you're thinking of taking on investors, they care more about the legal stack than they do about the logo. So make sure that you don't forget that part of your stacks and your systems as well. And that, I believe, is my last slide. Are there any questions? I feel like I sped through it.
No, you did good. Thank you. Thank you, Petra. As questions are coming up in the chat, I have a quick few questions and we have a poll we're going to put up. So we're going to try to do everything at once. Um, so your work at the FAA, an environment where you can't afford to build first and figure it out later. How does your background shape the way you think about AI projects versus how most entrepreneurs approach them?
It gave me a front row seat to see what happens if you rush to build before you sufficiently plan.
Mhm.
I said it before, and I'll say it again. Um, the the earlier you can solve a problem, the better. And if you wait until you're coding to figure out, oh, you know what, I do need to add these security features, or you know what, this actually doesn't, it's not really well architected, or actually this isn't built to take on more than like 10 users at a time, because AI will naturally try to just deliver you something sometimes. If you don't give it like certain parameters, ChatGPT is famous for this. It will have you building a straw house every single time. I have spent so much time arguing with ChatGPT in the past, um, just for it to come and say, like, you are right.
Yeah.
Like this would probably completely throw off your product if you did it the way that I recommended. But that's the way that's ChatGPT's personality. Because each one of those LLMs, they have their tendencies, they have their personalities. And ChatGPT's is, let's just get it out the door. That's all you
Yeah.
need to do, just get it out the door. If
Yeah.
you're trying to sell something, if you're looking for longevity, yeah, it's not just getting it out the door. It's, is it reliable? Is it sustainable?
Yeah.
Um, is it scalable? And those are all things that you have to take into account from the beginning. Once you're already halfway down the road, it's really expensive to take those into account.
Yeah, for
And I've
sure.
seen millions of dollars wasted
Mm.
when, people plan to fail because they're like, oh, we don't have time. You're
Fair.
going to make time eventually. So,
I have one more question, and we have two questions in the chat. We'll try to get to really quickly. A lot of people on this call aren't tech founders, and feel like systems design isn't their lane. What would you say to someone who thinks they need to learn to code before they're allowed to plan?
you don't. Um, I think it's nice. Um, and that's the reason why I kind of harped a little bit on best practices and all those things that you need to put in your prompt is you need to make sure that the LLM does that for you.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that there doesn't need to be a human in the loop because, um, in essence, you are the product owner, right? And so you're the final decision maker. And so you do kind of need to see what it's feeding back to you. But everything that it gives you, you can put it into the LLM and be like, I need you to break it down for me like I'm a novice. There have been several times where I've had to be like, so I need you to guide me step by step in detail as if I'm a novice on how to do this thing that you just told me to do. And it does. So you don't need to be an expert. Um, what you just need to do is if you can master um, asking your AI, whatever you choose to do, um, to take on the right role within the right context, which is what we've been talking a lot about, then it will deliver what you want. And if it speaks anything back to you that you don't understand, tell it to re-explain in simpler terms, and it will. But you don't need to be an expert in any of this. One of the strengths of AI is that before, I think one of the barriers would be funding, because you need funding to hire all these experts that you would need to generate and create this software product. With AI, you can get some of that expertise in-house, especially if you ask the right questions within the right context. And so it kind of levels a playing field where you may not have the finances to hire a cloud engineer. You may not have the finances to hire a systems engineer, solutions architect, or whatever. But if you can ask your LLM the right questions, then you can get that knowledge. And if you do like I do, and I think somebody else in the chat kind of mentioned using a similar technique where you kind of you take what you get from one and you may put it in another just to
Mhm.
verify, then you're good.
Yeah, good, good, good. Okay, we have a couple questions, and this one, these questions can be answered either by Petra or Dr. Prewitt. Can you briefly discuss establishing or maintaining your IP when you allow AI to code and build for you? There's a ton of gray areas, and we need to protect ourselves.
That's something that would be in the terms of service in the policies of whatever AI tool that you use. And that
Mhm.
kind of goes into your legal stack, right? In the very beginning, you kind of need to take those agreements, and I initially would run them through an LLM and be like, okay, does this prevent me from being able to sell a product that I create with this? And it can read through it and let me know. But also a good rule of thumb or practice is to seek a professional just to sign off on that,
Mhm.
especially before you go into like taking money for it. Um, so
Okay.
I don't know if Anderson had something he wanted to add.
No, I'd agree. I think you know, one part of that equation, as Peter said, seek professional help in all things legal. Like that's, I think, those financial, those legal, whatever else. You always want to have some human check. But I think, Peter's the right way, where it's like that's always a good first start, right? Like those terms of service, there's whole things they make them almost unreadable on purpose, right? Trick is a lot of LLMs actually are designed to actually search through and read that stuff. So definitely worth the experience, especially as I've seen the chat and kind of joined into making the LLMs, be real toxic and go, gaslight each other. Let them go and see like, hey, which LLM has the worst terms of service for creating software from this, and ask and go back and forth, ask a couple of them to check the other ones or check its own and kind of whatever. You may get, a potpourri of different kind of answers, but from that, you should get a huge corpus of like stuff or solutions or answers from that. If you then take that and either, yourself or through a separate LLM or chat or just whatever, summarize it to its most basic, what are the main key things I need to look out for, you'll probably get some kind of agreement either from all of them or from what you see yourself. That's the point. You can just take that simpler part to a lawyer and be like, hey, am I good on this? Right. But I think a lot of times, and this is honestly, I say with most of the legal stuff related to using LLMs or with LLMs, that's kind of the process I would go. I would say kind of check, hey, from an IP standpoint, am I protected? What's novel? Is this good? What is it? Et cetera, et cetera. Start there with, LLM one. Um, Probably ask the same or similar question to LLM two. Then, switch them out or go to the third one, however you want to do it. And then from those, maybe get some third LLM judge or for yourself, see is there anything that kind of bubbles to the surface that bubble up stuff, like those like five things that were consistent throughout. That's the part I would kind of, summarize and ask a lawyer, your IP attorney, or whatever else, like, hey, what does this mean for me to my future goals and go from there.
Okay. Okay.
Don't
Good. Good.
forget
Good.
your own IP too. Like, yes, there's the IP of the AI tools that you use, but there's also the IP that you're creating. And so protect yourself with the
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah. Oh, and I was gonna say, and one thing about like when you think like your own IP, it's one of those things where even if, a good portion of the code base may come from what the, AI did, that doesn't mean you're not doing it in some unique way. That may be the thing. There's different types of what you think about, there's all kinds of IP, right? It could be a trademark, it could be a patent, it could be a copyright, it could be just a trade secret, right? Depending on where the code of the AI fits, it may not necessarily be an issue per se, right? Again, this is where legal counsel comes into play, but is the part of what you're using it for part of the trade secret side, where is it part of the patentability side? Is it a copyright thing, right? All those are where that attorney would kind of walk you through where each piece fits. So, just because it was say coded by AI doesn't necessarily make it unpatentable or or make it not IP. It doesn't necessarily also mean that, it's released it directly to the other person. But I think the main thing to kind of understand is for your entire, bundle of IP and your kind of, IP framework, what is the part that's unique and valuable? And it may not actually be the code.
Okay. All right.
And
This is good. Oh, go ahead.
one last thing, um, you also need to be aware that it can also depend on the membership tier.
Right.
So if you're on the free plan, usually they're going to own it. But I found with some of the ones the plans that you pay for or that membership tier, then they let you on the IP of whatever it is that you create with that tool. But again, verify.
Right, right. Okay, awesome. Awesome. This is good. We sent out a poll just now on what people have in their stacks. And I see everyone is using a variety of tools, which we love. And I see a question in the chat, which I think Petra kind of covered in terms of I'm using Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, because each does something better than the others. Is there a true all-in-one AI platform that combines the strengths of all three? And so when you look across all these different, and you think about all your different stacks and everything, is there kind of the Swiss Army knife of AIs?
Uh,
Petra.
okay, so of the LLMs, honestly, my favorite is Claude, hands down. Um, and I do like using Claude as a team supplement. You know what I mean? When I do the conversations back and forth. When it comes to like AI coding systems, I honestly like to use Cursor a lot now. And within Cursor, you can actually have access to different models. Like you can use, you know, their in-house model, or you can tag into Claude, or you can tag into Codex, or what have you. So I do like using those two um, as my favorites. But again, nothing is perfect. But those are just my preferences.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I would just say I kind of agree. I think Claude is kind of winning right now in terms of like the reasoning, kind of putting a lot of stuff together. Um, I think the one thing I would kind of caution is, and this is kind of a large debate people are asking even about the whole, AGI or artificial general intelligence, the kind of the one-stop shop that knows everything. The other question is, it may sound nice and seem convenient, but do you really want that? You know what I'm saying? And I say that to say like just think about, all the smart people, right? If I get a broken arm, I want a really smart doctor who really knows how to fix broken arms. I don't necessarily want, a PhD material scientist who knows how to make a really good cast when I have the broken arm. You know what I'm saying? Like those are two different and distinct things. I also don't want them to just be also my mechanic and not know, like I want somebody who's kind of vetted for both things. And so I think a lot of times, and we see how this kind of going where, you know, we have to kind of look at the trade-off of like trying to get something that's super general that can do it all those things, or deciding ahead of time, here is what I need right now, here's what I'm trying to do, and then kind of, versioning based on that.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we are approaching our wrap-up time. Thank you both. Thank you, Dr. Prewitt, and thank you, Petra. I had a ton of more questions, but of course, time is we gonna respect people's time because we know some of us are in the middle of our workday. So before we wrap up, I just want to say, well, thank you to our speakers for making time and sharing your knowledge. Thank you for our attendees for spending this time learning a few things. And in terms of sharing AI toolkit and resources, we'll have documents and stuff we'll share that Petra referred to and Anderson, Dr. Pruitt referred to. Plug in with BILF community resources and upcoming events. We have a ton of stuff coming up on our calendar, so check out our website and our social media. And when we think about Black builders have always been innovative, AI is just another lever. And so we really want to think about how we're using that lever to uplift not just the things that we're envisioning right now, but the things that we'll envision that will transpire over the future. Yes, please, everyone, drop some connection materials in the chat. We just like I said, want to connect and keep the conversation going, we did this chat in the spirit, this roundtable, this fireside chat in the spirit of Juneteenth, because we really wanted everyone to kind of reflect on, as Black entrepreneurs or Black innovators, how to be intentional builders with AI instead of just, like using it on a surface level, and not just about mindset but actual action. So I'm gonna leave you all with this parting thought in terms of what's one thing someone in this room, for everyone in this room, you think you can do in the next 7 days that can move you from thinking about AI to actually using it in a intentional manner. So please reach out, connect. We would love to continue the conversation. And without further ado, Rose, is there anything else we're missing before we wrap up?
Yes, we are always on the lookout for individuals to sign up to help us with Great American Teaching. And so we please encourage you to reach out to us and sign up for that. If you don't know what Great American Teaching is, it's where I think it's October, November, where you're able to go into the different schools and basically speak to the students about your profession. Always looking, and these schools are always looking for more individuals within STEM to be, to have representation within those. And so please reach out to us and sign up so you can go and inspire our youth at these schools for the Great American Teaching. So definitely reach out. And also for those who have signed up, we will send out some information to about our future events, and also make sure that you sign up for our newsletter, because on our newsletter we share events. We share events from other organizations. Also encourage you to join BILF as a organization or just an individual. But sign up for our newsletter. We share events that we're doing, that other orgs are doing. We also share different resources and opportunities, grants, anything that we are able to identify and vet, and then share it with our community. So definitely reach out to anyone on the board and also sign up for our newsletter. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good Friday and a good weekend. Be safe, be productive. Take care.
Thank you.